Good day and welcome to my presentation. First off, let me thank you for coming to the symposium today, and thanks to the organizers for bringing so many together to share information and research on the Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument. My name is Marsha Holland. I arrived in Garfield County, Utah in 1999 with a newly minted bachelor's degree in history in hand, and here is where I began my career as a historian. I have been involved with the Southern Utah Oral History Project since 2000, but its origins start before then. For that segment, I am honored to introduce Marietta Eaton, the former Science Program Manager for the monument. Over to you, Marietta.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Marietta Eaton, and Marsha Holland asked me to share my personal history in founding the Southern Utah Oral History Project. Hired in 1997 at Grand Staircase, I was the lead for the Cultural and Earth Sciences Division. History was one of 7 programs and staffs I managed. The entire 20-member planning team was tasked with the identification and analysis of the resources, objects, and values articulated in the proclamation under a broad scientific aegis. With experience in collecting oral histories, I saw them as the most expeditious way to gather local historic information to use in the planning and to determine how to manage the values expressed in the designation. The expectations were high for this monument, where BLM implicitly debuted conservation as a valid multiple use across a large landscape. If this risk to gather histories paid off, locals, descendant communities, and scientists could potentially see immediate gains from this low-hanging fruit with long-term payoffs. So, what was I thinking? Well, the vision focused on oral interviews and how humans have been influenced by this landscape. As an optimist, I was thrilled about the prospects to build trust and make connections with local and scientific communities and offer an olive branch to build bridges and to conduct triage to collect accounts from elders as well as practice an inclusive approach and invoke stories from people with firsthand intimate experiences on this landscape. It was also a way for BLM to really display its respect for anybody who wanted to talk to us and pay tribute to those who dared share their knowledge, and a meaningful way for us to give local communities a voice, albeit one story at a time, and to preserve knowledge and histories to better comprehend how individuals have tried to bend this landscape to their will or discover its secrets, and maintain these stories for posterity. Furthermore, these collections confirmed the values identified in the proclamation and provide details about critical resources. The goals of the program were to assemble a body of in-depth specific cultural knowledge about the symbiosis between humans and landscape. The results were extremely satisfying, the early results, with first-person narratives and primary documents, some representing a lone record of events or eras like the historic Taylor Grazing Act, and legends about people and places like Everett Roos and Bull Valley Gorge. Unique snapshots in time, painted with words and storytelling, were used for interpretation at the Cannonville Visitor Center and Perea Town Site and Cemetery. Oral histories as baseline documents were also used to compare environmental conditions through time. And one possibility here that comes to my mind was the USGS repeat photography project on the monument, where images from almost a century ago were used to document ecological changes since 1928. This is a really good window to validate ecological conditions. This is the same as using traditional ecological knowledge from tribes. BLM was also able to mine these early oral histories to use in the monument plan, and thus began the tradition of providing these histories to our local libraries, schools, community centers all around the monument. So basically the history program and the monument were well rewarded. The program achieved 90% of the goals, the early goals established in 97, and under the leadership and commitment of Marsha Holland, it has continued to be successful over the long term. And now I challenge each of you, especially people who are in the natural, the hard sciences, so to speak, to consult this body of soft information and knowledge and confirm perhaps your own work and enrich the awareness of this outdoor laboratory for social and natural sciences. Again, thank you, Marsha Holland, everyone who shared stories about this place and this wild country, and our hosts. Good luck. Thanks again.
Thank you, Marietta. I am honored to be a part of this project. Similar to Marietta, I would like to highlight the oral history as a powerful resource, the benefits and value of oral history, and suggested uses, as well as provide examples of oral histories, all of which contribute to perspectives and our understanding of the area's land and water. Generally, someone telling a story demands attention. A story has details and provides context to an event or a point in time. It cannot be manipulated, redrawn, or recalculated. It is personal. A story also provides information unwittingly or purposefully and can be used to convey knowledge to a variety of people. Stories give us a unique glimpse at the past, which is foundational for the future, especially generationally. What is the value of human observation? It is time sensitive and likely will not be repeated. Ask any author or newspaper reporter and they will tell you the value of the first-hand account. Direct observation adds to information collected, whether it be empirical data of the Russian olive presence on the Escalante River, the birth records of a local midwife in the 1900s, or the number of sheep at the shearing corral in Cannonville in the 1920s. First-hand accounts are important. As example, how was transportation accomplished across rugged landscapes? To facilitate barter and trade or other economies gleaned from desert landscapes and the spare or unpredictable water sources. The Hell's Backbone Bridge was essential to transportation goals. Within these primary documentations lie the stories, the record of hard work, sacrifice, and faith reflected in the humans who live here today. Oral history collection is an exceptional medium to preserve and communicate cultures of the region. Again, the information gleaned from oral histories of the past century is time sensitive. It can be used as a unique resource to researchers. For example, the information used for an environmental impact study. A recent EIS for grazing looked for specific quotes from oral histories that might be used to bolster information on the range conditions and other aspects and opinions required for the report. Authors use oral histories to add human interest and observations to their manuscripts. SUU's historian Mark Miller's new book, Red Rock and Rawhide, leans on the Southern Utah Oral History Project throughout his 500-page volume. The monument's first ecologist, also Mark Miller, and 1970s range tech Brent Owens gives us an idea of range conditions over 6 decades, which should inform management decisions now and in the future. The Oral History Project presents largely a Mormon perspective on life ways and resources on the monument. We gain a clearer understanding of the local perspective on ideas such as environmentalism. A 2001 interview with Desmond Twitchell gave his practical insight on what environmentalism meant to a farmer-rancher at the time. He said, to make the land better than they found it for the next generation. Admitting overuse in the previous generations, he endeavored to make it better, as did Wallace Ott of Tropic, who stressed the overuse of the land as the 1934 Taylor Grazing Act was implemented. Ott spent his lifetime planting trees on the East Fork of the Sevier to help restore the land. Additionally, all the CCC contributions to the region. Hobart Feltner moved here from Kentucky to join a Henryville CCC camp in the 1930s. He provided valuable detail on the Civilian Conservation Corps' work and camp life. Our area would be very different if the CCC had not done their work on the roads in our region. As well, oral histories explain the first precious water piped into Henryville, as well as how and why rip-gut fence was used. Native Americans were displaced by the arrival of Anglo settlers. Their water sources and the land was sequestered by the 1800s. Oral histories unveil interactions between the native population still on the land and the settler stock. At age 100, I interviewed Melda Davis, whose father-in-law, Johnny Davis, was one of the first residents of Cannonville. Melda recounted how Johnny spoke both Paiute and Dene, offering his place as a base camp for traveling Dene, who traded squash and blankets for horses in the Bryce Valley area. The stories and experiences of the Paiute, whose offspring were transferred to Indian schools in northern Utah, away from their culture and traditions, and those adopted by well-meaning LDS families, are throughout the oral history interviews. The people tell stories of their ancestors traveling through this region, seasonally for collecting resources for baskets and cradle boards, collecting roots and seeds, and the hunt. These stories came to the project when elders were interviewed in the early 2000s. In addition to sheep, cattle, and Angora goats, there were growing herds of horses that took a toll on the land. In Boulder, the local cattle association ordered ranchers to take the horses, aka burros, off the land in the 30s to preserve the dwindling graze for the cattle. Here, Kay Clark Henryville, born in 1912 in Cannonville, is seen here herding up wild horses from the benches above Bryce Valley. And Deloy Dutton, born 1930 in Georgetown near Cannonville, tells about these wild horses and how they got there.
In my day, but my dad said that dry valley out there was full of wild burros. Used to be herds of them out there. And he said they'd, as kids when he was growing up, when they'd get out of school in the spring, they'd go catch him a burro and break it to ride, and then they'd ride it all summer around and take care of it, and then when time come for winter to feed it, they'd turn it loose and they'd go back out there and winter. And I guess when they put the Tiller Grazing Act in effect and made the grazing permits and stuff, why they went out there, the BLM did and shot them all.
Right. The true treasure of the oral history is the voice. Crackly, smooth, halting, and many distinctive dialects along the project area. There are books and there are graphs, but the authentic voice is without filter. It is engaging and personal. Adding to the information we have, the oral histories are invaluable treasures to researchers, management, and above all, next generations of residents who hear the stories, which add texture and life to their genealogy and fill in the gaps with details of everyday life that is fast fading from current memory. How was the Taylor Grazing Act implemented? Wallace Ott, an original board member when the Taylor Grazing Act was implemented here, talks about the severe range degradation and flooding on the Paria. He states the Taylor Grazing Act was welcomed. What were the impacts of nuclear testing in this region of the downwinders? And furthermore, capturing the essence of important partnerships reveal opportunities where communities came together with a common cause, sharing information amongst multiple agencies. The Escalante River Watershed Partnership, Scenic Byway 12, and including the designation story of the Grand Staircase-Escalante National Monument. In the end, these cherished partnerships for the monument were born from cooperation and lead to better protections of land and water, as well as stronger communities. As Marietta has stated, the goals of the project include preservation of regional cultural history, exploring how the landscape influenced human settlement, oral history as an effective medium to record, convey, and preserve primary documents of local histories, and the distribution of the resource, which is widespread and ongoing throughout the region and state. The connections that local residents have to their communities is a sacred trust in their eyes. Through the Oral History Project, trust has been built in these communities honoring their pride and kinship to the past, while creating advocacy and support for the project. The 27-year run of the Oral History Project is an invaluable and irreplaceable record of human events and human perspective of the hardscrabble life here. This important episode of history for the monument has been well documented. From this, large-scale trends can be verified through the breadth of these oral histories. And lastly, it is the connections with the communities and people I cherish. I am honored to be a part of this project. Thank you.